They say a mother's love is unconditional. Well, let me tell you something, honey. I loved my children unconditionally for 30 years. And you know what they gave me back? Papers. Legal papers that said I was too broken to take care of myself. But here's the thing they didn't know. I wasn't broken. I was just preparing. My name is Eleanor Walsh. I'm 68 years old, sitting in my modest kitchen with my morning coffee, and my children call me Mom when they need money, and a burden when they don't. 3 months ago, I signed papers giving them control of my life. Today, I'm taking it back. You see these weathered hands holding this manila envelope? Everything you think you know about being a good mother. I'm about to show you how wrong you are, because sometimes the best thing you can do for your children is stop being their mother. And trust me, they're going to learn what they lost, the hard way. Because I wasn't just a mother for 30 years. I was a woman. And this woman, she's done playing games. You want to know when I first realized my children didn't love me? It wasn't when they moved across the country. It wasn't when they stopped calling. It was when my husband, Paul, died, and they fought over the funeral arrangements like I wasn't even there. For 30 years, I thought I was the perfect mother. I made their lunches, drove them to practice, helped with homework until 2 a.m. I gave them everything I never had: love, attention, security. And somehow, that made them feel entitled to everything. Paul's service was beautiful. The flowers, the music, the speeches about what a wonderful father he was. But when the lawyer read the will, my children didn't cry. They calculated. Leslie actually brought a calculator to her father's funeral. That's when I heard Mark whisper to his sister, "Thank God Dad left everything to Mom. She'll be easier to handle." Handle, like I was a problem to be solved, not a person to be loved. That night, I made a decision. If they wanted a frail, confused mother, I'd give them one. I started small, forgetting names, mixing up dates, acting a little slower. What they didn't know was that I was taking notes. Every dismissive look, every eye roll, every conversation they thought I couldn't hear. I bought a little notebook, pink, with flowers, the kind of thing they'd expect a confused old lady to have. But inside, I was building a case against my own children. I documented everything. Every time they talked about me like I was already dead. Every time they discussed my future without asking what I wanted. Every time they exchanged those looks, you know the ones, when they thought I wasn't paying attention. But I was paying attention. I was paying very close attention. And honey, by the time I was done, I had enough evidence to destroy them. But first, I had to let them destroy themselves. The day my children tried to steal my life, I was wearing my favorite dress, the blue one with tiny flowers that Paul bought me for our anniversary. I chose it on purpose. I wanted to look vulnerable. Leslie called that morning. "Mom, we need to talk about your future." Future. Like I was a problem they were solving. I made them coffee in Paul's favorite mugs. I thought maybe if I reminded them of him, they'd remember who they used to be. Then Julia walked in with her briefcase and her perfect smile. "Mrs. Walsh, your children are concerned about your well-being." What they didn't know was that I'd already researched Julia Martin, top-rated lawyer, specializes in elder care and asset protection. I offered her cookies, the ones I'd been making for my children since they were babies. She ate 3. I played my part perfectly, confused about dates, mixing up names, asking the same questions twice. But I was watching, every glance between them, every impatient sigh, every moment they thought I wasn't there. They put papers in front of me, conservatorship documents. Just a precaution, Mom. I looked at my children, the babies I'd rocked to sleep, the toddlers I'd taught to walk, and they couldn't even meet my eyes. I signed with a shaky hand. But here's what they missed. I signed my maiden name first, then corrected it. A lawyer's trick Paul taught me. As I signed, I whispered, "Are you sure this is what you want?" Leslie patted my hand like I was a child. "Don't worry, Mom. We'll take good care of everything." Everything. Not everyone. Everything. What they didn't know was that I'd been recording everything. My phone, hidden in my purse, had been capturing every word. I'd also been wearing a medical alert necklace. Not for emergencies, for evidence. After they left, I sat in Paul's chair and listened to the recording. Their voices, so cold, so calculating. I cried for an hour. Not for what I'd lost, but for what I'd finally understood. My children didn't love me. They loved what I could give them. That night I called my real daughter, the one I'd given up for adoption 50 years ago. Julia Martin wasn't just any lawyer. She was the baby I'd held for 3 days before giving her a better life. She'd found me 5 years ago. We'd been planning this reunion ever since. You see, when Julia introduced herself to Leslie and Mark, she wasn't lying. She was their lawyer. She just didn't mention whose side she was really on. For 3 months, we'd been building a case. Not against me. Against them. Every confused moment had been carefully documented. Every dismissive comment. Every time they talked about me like I wasn't there. The conservatorship papers they thought gave them control? They actually gave me ammunition. Julia and I had been meeting secretly every week. Not at her office. Too risky. At the park where I used to take Leslie and Mark as children. She'd bring coffee and legal documents. I'd bring stories about the children she'd never met. We weren't just building a legal case. We were building a relationship. The mother-daughter bond I'd lost 50 years ago. Because sometimes the best way to teach your children a lesson is to let them think they've won. Before you show them what losing really feels like. You know what's beautiful about being underestimated? People stop watching you. They stop listening. They assume you're harmless. And that's when you strike. After the conservatorship, my children's behavior changed overnight. They stopped pretending to care. Leslie took my car keys. "For your safety, Mom." But I saw her driving my car the next day. Mark changed the locks on my own house, said it was for security. But I wasn't given the new keys. I let them treat me like an invalid. I shuffled when I walked. I asked for help with simple things. But at night when they thought I was sleeping, I was working, planning, preparing. Julia's team investigated everything. Where my money was going, how my children were spending it. Leslie had already put a down payment on a vacation home. With my money. Mark had enrolled his kids in private school. Tuition paid with my savings. But the worst part? They'd been planning this for years, since Paul's diagnosis. I found emails between them. "When Dad dies, we need to move fast. Mom's getting old anyway. They'd been discussing my decline while I was caring for their dying father. While they thought they were managing my assets, I was acquiring theirs. The building where Leslie's cafe was located, I bought it through a shell company. Mark's apartment complex, I was now his landlord, and he had no idea. Then I found Paul's real will, not the one the lawyers read, his actual, final will. He'd known what our children were planning. He'd tried to protect me. His last act was changing everything. The house, the money, the properties. He left them to me with specific instructions. Paul's letter to me was heartbreaking. Ellie, if you're reading this, our children have shown their true colors. I'm so sorry I failed to raise them better. But you still have time to teach them. Make them remember who they used to be, or show them who they've become. Armed with Paul's real will and Julia's legal expertise, I started taking control. Every property they thought they'd inherit. I began transferring ownership, not to them, to Julia, my real daughter, the one who'd earned it. I started small. Leslie's cafe began having problems. Surprise inspections, permit issues. Mark's credit applications were mysteriously denied. His promotion at work, suddenly rescinded. They thought it was bad luck. I knew it was justice. I watched them struggle, watched them panic, watched them blame everything except their own choices. Part of me wanted to help. The mother in me died hard. But then I remembered their laughter at Paul's funeral, their calculations, their plans, and I realized that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your children is let them face the consequences of their choices. All of them. Chess was Paul's favorite game. He tried to teach the children, but they were too impatient, too focused on winning quickly. Me? I learned to think 10 moves ahead. And honey, checkmate was coming. 3 months into the conservatorship, my children's lives began unraveling in ways they couldn't understand. I watched from my assisted living apartment, the one they'd chosen for me without asking, as their perfect plans crumbled. Leslie's cafe was bleeding money. Customers complained about the new energy. The place felt cold, unwelcoming. What she didn't know was that I'd been the heart of that place for 15 years. I'd greeted every regular customer, remembered their orders, their families. Without me, the cafe was just a business, and businesses without soul die quickly. When Julia walked into Leslie's cafe as the new landlord's representative, I watched through the window. Leslie's face, when she realized she couldn't afford the rent increase, the same face she'd made when I'd asked for help with my medication. I almost walked in, almost revealed myself. But then I remembered her words. Mom's just being dramatic. Mark's perfect life imploded faster than Leslie's. His promotion was rescinded, his mortgage application denied. The company he worked for? I'd been quietly buying shares through Julia's firm. His new boss was someone I'd handpicked, someone who valued respect for elders. They called an emergency meeting. We need to discuss Mom's care. Care. Not well-being, not happiness. Care. I listened from my bedroom as they calculated my monthly expenses. My value. My worth. They decided I was too expensive to keep in assisted living. They wanted to move me to a state facility. I recorded everything. Their voices, so cold, so calculating. Mark said, "Look, she's not really living anyway. She won't know the difference." Leslie agreed. "We're just prolonging the inevitable. Dad would understand." That night, I held Paul's picture and cried. Not for myself. For him. For the disappointment he'd feel. I could hear his voice. "Ellie, they're not the children we raised. But they're still our children." But I wasn't their mother anymore. I was their teacher. And class was in session. I accelerated the timeline. Leslie's cafe lease was terminated. Mark's apartment building was sold. Both properties were purchased by the same company, a company that specialized in elder care. The new owners offered them jobs, caring for elderly residents, minimum wage. Word spread about how Leslie and Mark had treated their mother. Small towns have long memories. Their friends started asking uncomfortable questions. "How's your mom doing? We haven't seen her lately." They began lying about where I was. "She's traveling. She's visiting relatives." I realized they were trapped by their own lies. They couldn't admit what they'd done without admitting who they'd become. They were prisoners of their own shame. But they were too proud to acknowledge it. Julia and I prepared for the endgame. Not just financial consequences, emotional ones. We documented everything, every dismissive comment, every broken promise, every moment they'd treated me like I was already dead. I was ready to show them what they'd lost. Not just my money, not just my property, but my love, my respect, my forgiveness. Because some things, once broken, can't be fixed. And some people, once they show you who they really are, can't be unseen. And tomorrow they were going to learn that the mother they'd buried was about to rise from the dead. And she wasn't coming back to forgive them. Resurrection isn't just a religious concept, honey. Sometimes it's a mother's last gift to her children, teaching them the difference between being alive and being truly living. I chose the anniversary of Paul's death for the revelation. Poetic justice, he would have called it. I dressed in the outfit I'd worn to our wedding. Blue dress, pearl necklace, the ring he'd given me 40 years ago. I wanted them to see the woman they'd forgotten, the one who'd loved them unconditionally. I invited them to lunch. Mom wants to discuss her future. One last performance before the curtain fell. I chose the restaurant where Paul had proposed, where we'd celebrated every birthday, every achievement, every milestone. The same booth where I'd told them I was pregnant with each of them, where I'd announced their father's diagnosis. I played the confused mother perfectly, mixing up names, forgetting details, acting grateful for their help. I thanked them for the assisted living facility, for taking care of my finances, for being such good children. They relaxed, smiled, patted my hand. They thought they'd won. Then I pulled out a manila envelope. "I have something for you both." Their faces lit up. They thought it was paperwork making their control permanent. Instead, it was eviction notices. For both of them. I watched their faces change. Confusion, disbelief, anger, fear. I straightened in my chair, let my voice become clear, strong, commanding. "Let me introduce myself properly. I'm Eleanor Walsh. I'm 68 years old. I'm perfectly healthy, mentally sharp, and I'm done being your victim." I played the recordings. Their voices, cold and calculating, filled the restaurant. Other diners turned to stare. They heard everything. The planning, the calculations, the dismissal. Leslie started crying, not from remorse, from embarrassment, from being caught. That's when Julia walked in. Not as their lawyer, as my daughter. I introduced her properly. This is Julia Martin, my eldest daughter, the one I gave up for adoption 50 years ago, the daughter who found me, who loved me, who chose to build a relationship instead of taking what she could get. Every property they thought they'd inherit, every asset they'd been counting on, it was gone, transferred to Julia, the daughter who'd earned it through love, not entitlement. Their childhood home, now a halfway house for elderly abuse victims. I'd sent copies of the recordings to their friends, their co-workers, their children's schools. The whole town knew what they'd done. There was no hiding anymore. They'd wanted to make me invisible. Instead, they'd made themselves infamous. Mark stood up furious. "You're our mother. You're supposed to love us unconditionally." I did love you unconditionally. For 30 years. You taught me that unconditional love is a luxury I can't afford. I loved you when you were unlovable. Now you need to learn to love yourselves when you're unlovable. Leslie begged, "Mom, we can fix this. We can make it right." Some things can't be fixed, sweetheart, but they can be learned from. I'm not punishing you. I'm teaching you. The lesson your father and I failed to teach you growing up. I stood up, kissed each of them on the forehead one last time. I love you both, but I love myself more now. That's the lesson I want you to learn. Love yourself enough to earn other people's love. Don't just expect it. And as I walked away, I heard Leslie whisper, "What have we done?" But some lessons come too late to matter. There's a moment when every child realizes their parent is just a person, flawed, vulnerable, human. But there's another moment when every parent realizes their child is just a person too. And that moment can break your heart or set you free. I went home to my real home. Not the assisted living facility. Not the modest house they'd known about. My penthouse, the one I'd bought with Paul's life insurance. I poured myself a glass of wine, Paul's favorite vintage, and I waited for the phone to ring. Leslie called first, sobbing. "Mom, please, we made a mistake. We're sorry." I let her cry. Then I said, "I'm not your mom anymore, Leslie. I'm Eleanor. And Eleanor doesn't accept apologies from people who were only sorry they got caught." The silence that followed was deafening. She'd never heard me use that tone before. Over the next week, I watched their lives implode completely. Leslie's cafe closed. Mark lost his apartment. But I'd prepared for this. I'd set up a fund. Not for them. For their children. My grandchildren, the innocent ones, would be cared for. Through Julia's foundation. My grandson called me. "Grandma Ellie, Dad says you're sick. Are you okay?" I had to explain that I wasn't sick, that his father had lied, that sometimes adults make very bad choices. I told him I loved him, that what happened between me and his parents didn't change that. But I wouldn't be around for a while. The town was divided. Some people thought I was cruel. Others thought I was brave. Mrs. Henderson from the grocery store hugged me. "Eleanor, you taught your children the lesson their father couldn't." 3 other women in town came forward with similar stories. We started a support group. Mark showed up at my door. Drunk, angry, desperate. "You destroyed our lives." Over what? Pride? Revenge? "I didn't destroy your lives, Mark. I revealed them. There's a difference. I invited him in, made him coffee, sat him down like I had when he was a child. You want to know what broke my heart? It wasn't signing those papers. It was realizing you were relieved when I did. You weren't taking care of me, Mark. You were taking care of a problem. And the problem was me being alive. He broke down. Real tears this time. Not angry tears. Ashamed tears. I don't know when we became these people, Mom. I don't know when we stopped loving you. You never stopped loving me, honey. You just started loving my money more. I offered him a choice. Both of them. One final chance. You can earn back my trust. Not my money, not my property, but my trust. Spend 1 year helping elderly people. Real help. Not because you have to, because you want to. Leslie refused. I won't be manipulated anymore, Mom. Not even by guilt. She'd learned nothing. She saw consequences as manipulation, love as control. I kissed her forehead. Then this is goodbye, sweetheart. I hope you find peace. Mark agreed, but I could see it in his eyes. He was doing it for the money, not for growth. Some people can't change, even when they lose everything, even when they want to. I love you, Mark, but I don't like who you've become, and I won't enable it anymore. I changed my will one final time. Everything to Julia. Everything to the daughter who'd chosen love over entitlement. I wrote letters to my grandchildren, to be opened when they turn 18. The truth about their parents. About choices. About love. Some bridges burn to light the way forward. This is my way forward. And as I sealed those letters, I realized I wasn't broken anymore. I was free. Free to love people who loved me back. Free to be Eleanor, not just Mom. Scars tell stories. They remind us where we've been, what we've survived, and who we've become. Mine tell the story of a mother who learned to love herself as much as she loved her children. 6 months later, I'm writing this from my garden. Julia's daughter, my granddaughter, is helping me plant roses. She calls me Grandma Ellie. Not because she has to, because she wants to. I'm teaching her to bake, the same recipes I taught Leslie. But with love, not expectation. The foundation Julia and I started has helped 200 families. Elderly people who are being taken advantage of by their own children. We don't separate families, we educate them. Some relationships heal, some don't. Both outcomes are okay. I speak at senior centers now. Your worth isn't determined by your children's love. Your love is determined by your worth. I saw Leslie at the grocery store last week. She looked tired, older, broken. We made eye contact. She started to approach. I walked away. Some people change. Some people don't. I can't save everyone, including my own daughter. Mark completed his year of service. He's different now. Humbler. We have coffee sometimes. He's learning. Slowly. But he's learning. Our relationship is different now. It's honest. It's conditional. It's healthy. I'm not the same mother I was. I'm not unconditionally loving. I'm conditionally loving. And I'm okay with that. Love yourself first. Then love others. But never love others more than you love yourself. I'm 68 years old. I'm healthy. I'm happy. And I'm enough. Remember, you taught your children everything they know. Now teach yourself what you deserve.